terrorist supporter Wafa Sharafa and Bassem Maru. These are terrorist reporters of the Associated Press are reporting on the war in Israel, between Israel and Gaza and Iranian-backed terrorist groups. I say that the Associated Press are terrorist reporters for the following reason. They have focused extensively and nonstop as rage has risen against Israel. And here is what they have reported that is deceptive. They have reported that Israel forces backed by fighter jets and drones carried out a second ground raid into Gaza as many days and struck targets. But here's what they also say, that they've talked about the Palestinian death toll has soared past 7,000 as Israel has carried out waves of devastating airstrikes in response to a bloody Hamas incursion into southern Israel on October 7th. The problem with this is this right here. This is not true. Yes, they did cause a horrific attack onto Israel on October 7th. But what they don't tell you is that they have continued to attack. They have continued over and over and over with rockets firing into Israel on a regular basis. To hundreds of thousands of people have had to flee Israel. People have had to leave their home as well, but they don't report on that. They don't report the attempted murder of hundreds of thousands of people because they don't talk about the rockets that have been fired into Israel. Now, if you look at the crime of attempted murder, the actual, just regular crime, what attempted murder is when somebody attempts to kill another person, but they're not successful. That's what attempted murder is. So you have attempted murder of hundreds of thousands of people in Israel because the continued rockets and missiles that have been fired at Israel, that their defense system has been able to thwart, but they have suffered losses. They have had where they hunted down an Israeli tank and killed all the members of that crew. But they don't talk about that. They don't talk about the ongoing onslaught of Israel. They only act like Israel is the only one, attacking. This is why I say that Associated Press are Israel. They are basically Palestinian Hamas terrorist supporters. And whenever you support terrorists by being biased in how you report, causing an uproar literally globally, acting as if only Palestine has suffered losses, well, if you're supporting terrorists in that way, then you are in fact a terrorist. People who support terrorists are terrorists. That is just a fact. So they don't talk about the continued attack on Israel. So what is if Israel wasn't able to defend against their rockets and their missiles, like those people that they tried to kill doesn't matter? See, that's a problem. And they're just so deceptive. So deceptive. They are constantly showing the rage against Israel. They're constantly showing the attack into Palestine, but they're not showing the rockets being shot at Israel regularly. Like Israel's just ongoing and firing away, and nobody's firing at them. You see what I'm saying? That's a problem for the Associated Press to continue to show these pictures. It's disgusting what they're doing. Absolutely disgusting. They need to show all the attacks regularly on Israel. And thank God that, their system is making them able to thwart against these attacks. So, let's count how many people could have been killed. Did you know that over 7,400 rockets have been fired into Israel since the start of this war? But has AP News told you that? Has any of the mainstream news told you how many rockets have fired into Israel? Of course not. All they have done is shown you Palestinian civilian people suffering. Now let's count. How many casualties can one rocket cause? So let's say if 7,400 rockets had hit their targets, let's calculate how many people would have died. And we're going to count these as attempted murder victims, okay? Because technically they are victims. All the people in Israel, including all the people who have had to evacuate, okay, and leave their homes and suffer financially and leave their families and their pets and their homes, all of these people are victims. So let's calculate. Now, granted, this is an arbitrary question, but let's just grab a small average of how many people that one rocket can kill with the 2.75-inch rocket from UH-1, okay? Up to 150 people can be killed with one rocket. That is 1,110,000 people potentially could have been killed. That doesn't include the drone attacks, the missiles that have been fired at Israel. These are just the rockets that made it into Israel, not the ones that were thwarted, okay? And the missiles that the U.S. was able to thwart that could have killed way more many people than that. 1,110,000 attempted murder victims of Gaza, Palestinians, and Hamas. Well, some of those were actually from the northern terrorist groups, but most of them came from Gaza. 1,110,000 attempted murder victims. If every one of those rockets had hit their target, that's the potential of how many people could have been killed and potentially many more injured. And meanwhile, Israel's flying little, they flew over and dropped pamphlets to try to warn people to evacuate. Did you see that video where before they target a certain area, they would drop leaflets warning people to evacuate? But Israel doesn't get warnings like, hey, we're fixing the fire at this particular place so you can leave. No, they don't do that. They have been firing relentlessly. 7,400 rockets. And that's not even an updated count, guys. So I ask you to demand the Associated Press knock it off. These are people who are terrorist supporters. They're trying to give the guys that they're trying to cover the war. They're not covering the war. They're just profiting off of these images. Oh yeah, there was a bad battle. They did a bad thing. They attacked them on October 7th. But since then, Israel has attacked them way more many times. And they don't talk about the continued bombardment of rockets that they continue to fire with no warning whatsoever, and with no warning of where people should evacuate from. Attempted murder victims are well over 1 million now. And just thank God that Israel has a defense system. But people, it is getting worse because people sheeple are following this bias, terroristic supporting terrorist news media people like Associated Press, okay, that are not putting things in perspective and, letting people see what is really happening other than just images of Palestinian civilians being harmed. It does need to be put in perspective. How dare they shoot 7,400 rockets and then act like only Israel is the one firing into Gaza? How dare they do this? Oh, I beg you who is watching this, please spread this. Please talk about it. Please call these news places and say, hey, knock it off. Because this is causing, literally what they're doing, their partial reporting is leading to more war, people. When you have people parading out through the country because they are only getting part of the news, they're not having it put in perspective, and they don't know that Israel has had 7,400 rockets fired into them after they murdered thousands of their people in a brutal, barbaric attack after they took the hostages and paraded them through the Palestinian streets as these Palestinians were celebrating. Where's the sympathy for those hostages as these Palestinians were celebrating them being tortured and paraded through their streets? Can we please just keep it in perspective? War is horrible for anybody and everybody. But it's got to be presented in a fair light because it affects the global war that is now increasing, people. And that's going to affect everybody globally, the economy, the devastation. Now we have United States soldiers being killed because our American media is falsely reporting, biasly reporting, and our people of our country are not standing up against it. It's only going to get worse.